What is up, everyone? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Game Cast. I am one of your hosts, Kenny, and with me is Tess.
Hello, everyone.
And we are back for episode 83 of the Game Cast. We were absent. This typically happens every so often, considering, it's COVID season still and things happen and whatnot. And whenever you get sick, you kind of have to go, is it COVID? Is it not COVID? Even if you don't have the symptoms, like lack of taste and stuff like that, you still kind of wonder. And so last week, I've been not feeling well. I had some stomach issues, and then just recently I've had a cold, and my daughter's had a cold, and we're also fighting pollen everywhere, so
Yeah.
allergies, and that's been really fun. Not really, and so the fear there is like, do you have COVID? Thankfully, the answer was no, we don't, and we were able to kind of get through it, but it wouldn't have made for a good podcast recording considering that I couldn't talk without sounding off, without coughing. Heck, I might have to mute to blow my nose. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Mm-hmm.
um, it just wasn't a good time, and so we took a week off. Plus, I was on vacation. I was like, why not? Why not? Let's take a week off.
Right.
But we are back though, and I'm happy to say that during my brief vacation, I was able to catch up on a bunch of stuff and watch things and play video games and all that good stuff. Because being sick, you can't really do much but watch stuff and
Mm-hmm.
sleep. And so that's what I did. And so I was able to finally catch up on the South Side Show on HBO. It is great. I love the fact that it's a family affair. There's the two writers are, or the two head writers are friends from college, but uh, the starring cast, so like the main two police officers, they're husband and wife in real life, which is great. The being able to work with your wife, and usually you kind of people kind of have like a problem with that. Like I gotta work with my wife, but the fact that it's done in such a they're both acting and they're not husband and wife on the show. They're actually, just partners. But the fact that you kind of get to do this thing where I don't want to say role play, but you're two different people essentially. I think is really cool. And the fact that you keep it in the family, that's two different checks, by the way. Just letting you know. It's two different checks coming to the same spot. It's like, you know what I'm saying? And so I thought that was really cool. But then also, uh, the one of the head writers got his older brother, who also writes on the show, is also in one of the starring roles as well. So they have family members, friends, friends from high school or elementary, friends from college. All of these people are in this show, and all of them do a wonderful job. They're all funny, and the writing is very smart. Um, and it's one of my new favorite shows on HBO. Definitely go check it out. If you like Insecure, it's not. I don't want to say like I don't want to get, paint a wrong picture. It's not like Insecure in the sense of how Insecure is built, but it's like Insecure in how it shows another side of blackness so that even though you're not from Chicago, you're going to understand what's happening. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
know, or how, if you're black, I should say, you're going to vibe with what's going on, if that makes it, any clearer. Um, and enjoy it. Hopefully, I thought it was funny, especially season two. There's a couple of times where I laughed out loud and I accidentally woke people up in my house, and I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
expect that because comedy is hard to do. Like comedy is, because it's so like everything is subjective, but it's extremely subjective. Like what's funny to one person isn't to someone else, and there's like
Yeah.
these insider jokes with black people. You know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's things that I'm like, I get it, but it's interesting, or I like this, but it's not really funny. No, there were times where I was like, oh my, like I had to pause the show because I was laughing so hard. Very, very
Mm-hmm.
good show. Definitely go check that out. I also got to catch up on a bunch of films. I played some of my games that were in my backlog. One of them I beat was Disco Elysium. I finally got to play this game. Was one of the dopest things about video games is that because they release all the time, there's always something to play. You're never have to search too far for something new. And so I had the game. I bought it last year, I believe. It was on sale, and I was like, you know what? Everyone's talking about this game. Let me try it. Bought it, and immediately I hated the protagonist. Now this is a good thing, mind you. But when I started out, I hated the protagonist. It's an RPG. You're playing a detective who has to solve. There's like a murder mystery, whatever that he has to solve. And so immediately I'm engaged because I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is like some clue stuff. But he's very unlikable because when you start the game, he wakes up in a drunken stupor and he doesn't remember anything about his life. And so you can imagine going into these conversations with these NPCs, you actually have to try to explain why you're there without knowing anything. Like the game opens up with him waking up on the floor. So you are put in the position that he's in. Like I don't know anything about him because I just started playing the game and he doesn't know anything about himself to give me. And so people are like, either like you're a cop. And he's like, I am a cop. And I'm like, crap. I'm looking at the options that I can, click to say, I'm a cop or I forgot my badge or I don't know where my shoes are. And I'm like, I don't want to say
Mm-hmm.
any of this crap. Like I don't drink. Like I don't want, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, who is this dude?
I know
And
that
like,
guy. I'd probably be really good at that game. Not for me.
man,
I'm not the alcoholic, but I know them.
I've known some of them definitely, but I've never like to black out to that extent to where you don't know what happened over the last 3 days is
Yeah,
wild, right? But then you
it's
have to
really
play.
wild.
And so what's interesting also is that you can steer his life from that point forward. You have to deal with it though. You have to deal with, your fellow police officers making fun of you. You have to deal with people looking at you in disgust. You smell bad. You have to look at all that stuff and try to navigate this world in a way that makes him look better. So it's like, you know what? Even though I don't have all of his background information, he does have an astute ability to, depending on how you level him up. He has an astute ability to just know things or to just glean information from the environment. Kind of like Psych. He looks around, he's like, oh, I see some stuff. This makes sense. Let's put two and two together. And so you can actually, by the end of the game, you can make him come around to be a really good person. You can make him a better detective and all this other stuff. But from the onset of the game, it's like you're fighting an uphill battle just with knowledge of himself. Before you
Mhm.
get into the clues of the case and how people are there's this huge political thing that's going on and rival factions and all this other stuff, you have to just try to navigate him being a cop. And it's like wild. It's really, really, it's a good game. I'm probably
Hmm.
never going to play it again because, and I say that not as a diss, I say that because there's a lot of different endings and things that you can do. But with these type of games where there's multiple endings or choices, I feel like I've made the choices I would make. And
Yeah.
so if I were to play it again, and let's say I just like forgot everything, I would make those exact same choices. So it would feel like, I don't want to say it wouldn't feel right if I went back and just made different choices arbitrarily because it's against kind of like who I am. You know what I'm saying? Like I guess
Hmm.
if I was role playing a bad guy, like a bad detective, I'm like, okay, I want to see what the bad detective does, or I got a new character maybe. But like if I go back to replay it just to see a different ending, I'm gonna instinctively make the same choices. So I typically
Yeah.
don't go back and play those. But I really enjoyed it. It's definitely worth the money, and it's one of the most well written video games I could think of, dialogue wise,
That's
in a long
good.
time. Like it's very, even if you don't play it, if you watch someone play it, I think you'll be amused just because of all the things that can happen. Um, it's bananas. I think go check out Disco Elysium. Anywhere it's sold, I think it's like 20. Well, actually, I got it on sale for uh like $20, but I think it's like 30 normally. Good game though. Definitely a good game. I was able to solve the crime and figure out all the clues and whatnot, but it's it took and it's not super long, surprisingly. Being an RPG is really not as
Mm.
long as you would think. It's more so you can kind of get stuck on what to do next. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? That I think that's the only difficulty there. And also being an RPG, there is a rolling of the dice. So like, let's say you're interrogating somebody and you want to convince them that you know something that you don't know. Depending on where you put your points when you upgrade or level up your character. Let's say you're good at like slick talk or you're good at like lying. The more points you have in that skill, you have a better chance of getting a good dice roll. But regardless of what you do, there's a chance that you might fail. And so you
Mm.
roll the dice, and if it comes up, in your favor, then you'll successfully be able to convince this person that you know information that you don't. If you fail that though, you fail that conversation, you might not be able to go back to that later, or you might hit a blow to your morality. If you get too many of those, you just quit. Like your person like gets so depressed that they just quit. There's a lot of different factors and layers in this game that I was not expecting at all. But it came out to be pleasantly surprising. So yeah, definitely check that out. Check out the South Side, or yeah, South Side on HBO Max. Two good things I got to see and do over this past week. What about you, Tess?
Not well for several days this week. There was a lot of sleeping going on.
That's always
And
good.
yeah, and then also non-sleeping because Hermione doesn't let me sleep anymore. Like every 3 hours apparently is, that's her sleep cycle. It's
Mm.
almost like 3 hours is like a month to her. And as time passes quickly for dogs. But like I yeah, so I just anyway, so yeah, my sleep is all messed up and I'm like just simply because I don't know, she's not letting me sleep. Um so I did check out Netflix's video games
Oh,
cuz
right.
I thought that was really weird when I was like, "What? There's Netflix games?" Like I opened Netflix on my phone. I think the only reason I figured that out is because I have Netflix on my old phone, which I use to cast to my bedroom television, and it just wasn't working, and so I had to put it on my current phone, and I think that's when I saw it was like, "Netflix has games, you should download them." Um, so I actually played this Netflix game, um, and it is called True Story, and it is about a girl, or she's not a girl, she's a woman. It's from Frost the company is called Frosty Pop, and,
Huh.
it's called This Is a True Story, and the main character's name is Bontu, and you basically are kind of following along as she makes a trip to get water. So she lives somewhere in I'm assuming Eastern Africa,
Okay.
and, she has to make a really long trek to get water for her household. And so you basically it's a short game, you can get it done in I think 30 minutes or so. And that's it. I think the artwork is very beautiful. Like the animations are low cost, I'm sure just cuz I'm just watching the animations, but like the backgrounds are really pretty and it
Oh,
kind of just
nice.
like details the savannah and it's like 2D. So she's just you just have to walk like linear. There's no depth to it or anything, so you're just walking linear and you have to you basically you it's I don't know, it's a very humbling story because it's your job to guide her. I mean, she's guiding you with her words, but you have to guide her through her trek to get water.
Right.
And she is explaining how, they moved to this area, the village. I guess I'm assuming they're nomadic and they moved to this area because of the river mouth, but the river mouth has dried. And so they have to go very far
Mm.
to another river. And I mean, basically, your job is to get water. And you have to understand that it takes this woman an entire day to go and get water. Like,
Oh,
she leaves her
wow.
house in the morning and she has to walk all the way to get water and then walk all the way back. And by the time she comes back home, it's nighttime.
That's
And
interesting.
it's interesting and it's just humbling because then you really have to look at yourself and your life. I mean, wherever you are, especially if you're in the Western world and you're living your life with your running water coming out of your faucets and your food from the supermarket. and 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 this game is teaching you to walk pace basically in the shoes of someone who doesn't have running water in their home and literally has to walk to a dried river to get the smallest amount of water that she can, which she knows are flies and bugs around, and then walk to a larger body of water to get more to fill the actual jug because she couldn't fill it before. And then wait in line because there are 50 other women doing the same thing. And beware of leeches. while you're doing it,
Oh,
just so you
wow.
can go home and boil the water so that it'll be ready
Dang, so if you
for
thirsty
usage.
in the morning, you're not getting a sip of water until the next day.
Yeah, she doesn't even get to drink water while she's walking. Like,
That's
and
rough.
it's very rough. It's like I mean, the game is just I it just kind of puts you in a place because when you realize what you're doing, and she's narrating the whole time, she's telling you the story, and it's called "This Is a True Story" because it's really based on, real people's lives. And, like, she has to take breaks during the you can't just keep moving. You have to rest under a tree because the sun is so hot. Sometime at nighttime, the wind blows. You have to avoid the sand. You have to avoid the poachers because there's poachers out there. You
Oh,
wanna avoid
wow.
pain. There were hyenas. They're literally hyenas, and she's like, "Oh, the last ti" she knows somebody who got messed up by a hyena or whatnot. She's, like, not trying to get caught, so, like, she does little things. But when if you really think about it, like, this is not just put in as a game mechanic to entertain you. This is real. Like, this is
Right.
actually what people have to do. Like, on their, you know 7-hour trek to get water, back and forth or whatever for water, they encounter savannah beasts, and she, like, picks up a rock and throws it so that they go to the distraction so that she can keep walking and not be seen. And
Oh.
like, just those types of things. And there's other things that happen, happy things like, oh, she walks past the school. She walks by some kids trying to play, football. Like, all kinds of like normal stuff that would happen in your day. But these are the what's the word? I don't want to say tribulations, but these are the things that happen in these women's lives. And she's narrating, telling you stuff that's happened to her. Like, she's like, you know, um, the children get sick a lot because they're drinking unclean water, and it's really hard for them to go
Mm.
to school when they're sick all of the time. And she mentions how one time when she was walking to get water, she fell off of some because you have to climb like some rocks to get past, and she's like, she fell, and, she was wounded pretty badly, and then she gets up and goes to get water again very soon after being injured because she's a mother and she has to do this. How else is she gonna get water to her household? And she talks about how she has friends who are generous and who have brought her water, but, like, it's such a simple thing that
Right.
we in our world are blessed enough to have access to clean water, where there literally are millions of people who do not have access to clean water, and their their stories of how they live day to day are so amazing. And so they put this into a game. This company put it into a game. The narrator is like, she's amazing,
It
and
looks good. I'm looking at
you're looking at the artwork, yeah.
it looks like, and I can't like it's close enough that it could be acrylic or oil paint, like the
Uh-huh.
backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah.
It's very well done, and it's
Yeah.
not something I expected to be in Netflix games. To be honest
Right.
with you,
Exactly.
I just didn't. But not that they couldn't. Most of these are if you're looking at the app, they're mobile games. So like if this is
Yeah.
something that was on a mobile uh, store, then of course
Mhm.
it would be here as well. But it's not. I just when I thought of mobile game or not mobile games, but Netflix games, I thought of all the different like types of Stranger Thing games. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
didn't expect that, but that's really cool. It's
Yeah.
under the educational banner, so
Yeah.
this is cool.
Yeah.
Should
It
definitely
was
check
really
that
cool.
out.
Definitely. It
All
was
right,
I liked
I'm
it.
going to actually flag that so I can look at it later. Um,
It takes
so yeah,
it's a short game,
and that's
and
something else I love. We need short
right?
games because good
No more
grief,
Valhallas.
fam. I the fact that I was able to get through a whole game because I was like, you know what, I'm on a vacation. I'm gonna get through my backlog because I don't. It's not a ton of games. There's games that I own that I've gotten, maybe like Humble Bundle, like I got a bunch of different games and maybe I'll play it,
Mhm.
maybe I won't. But this was like, I have a set few of games, like a set few that I want to play because either like a sequel is coming out or it's something that people have talked about a lot, so I really want to try it, etc.
Mhm.
So not every game that I've missed I'm going to go play because some of them I just don't care to play. But then there are the few that I'm like, you know what, I really want to try this, and realizing that a lot of them are really freaking long, and I'm like, I'm not going to get through many of my backlog, excuse me, games this way. And so anything that's short, yeah, let me play that because then I played it, it's out of my system, it's gone. I'm
Mm.
not curious about it, and I can move on.
Mhm.
But yeah, stuff like Valhalla where it's like 58 to 60 hours, I'm good, fam. I'm good. It's all right. And not to say that I will never play those again, but sometimes it feels like a job, and I already do this for a job. Like I already play
Yeah.
games and write about them. I in my leisure, which is hilarious in a sense because I do that with games that are free to play, where you just kind of they change all the time, so you keep playing like Fortnite. Um,
Mhm.
but those are different uh, in terms of how you play and how you go about that. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just was like, do I really want to do this? Do I? Nah, I'm gonna play something else. So yeah, the fact that that is short, I'm definitely gonna check that out when I get a chance. Um, and I'm happy that Netflix is trying their hand at different things because they need
Yeah,
to apparently.
they do.
One of our topics today actually is how Netflix has been in an interesting spot as of late. If you didn't know, Netflix announced that they lost 200,000 subscribers recently, and that part of that is due to, I know for a fact is due to the regions that they removed Netflix because of the war, but then there's
Mhm.
also the fact, this is more speculative right now, but them raising the price, and we were kind of talking about why that was happening and why people were kind of leaving off air. Um, because what happens is there's a trickle effect. We found out that they lost, their stock dropped. I want to say 35%. And so Netflix collectively lost, what, $55 billion in a day, which is bananas.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have, shoot. Like the amount of money that's a lot of money. A
Yeah.
lot, a lot of money. Like I don't think people understand how much a billion is to be able to fathom 55 of it being lost in a day. I think I would still be throwing up. I'd be throwing up all over the place.
Yeah.
I could just, it's just a lot of money, right? And so then the stock drop, and like that's happened before, not to this extent I don't think, but it's happened before. They've lost subscribers, things have changed, and there's a lot of different factors at play, whether it be the price going up, the like overabundance of content, the competition, stuff like that, that's making it a little tough for Netflix. But that also trickled down to them having layoffs recently. So we're gonna go into all that. But the first thing we want to talk about is them losing subscribers and why we think they're losing subscribers.
Yeah.
Before anybody says this or rolls their eyes or whatever the case may be, Netflix does have good content. Shut your face. The fact that they were able to lose that many people and still be around is because there's a ton of people that are still on that are still subscribed, and those people didn't come there for nothing. They have Netflix has good content. However,
Mhm.
I think one of the problems is that they release so much content so quickly that it's
Mhm.
overwhelming to the point of you don't know what to watch. And if
Mm.
you're anything like me, you kind of go back to your comfort shows. Like if you go on Netflix, you're like, I want to watch something. If it's not something that's advertised immediately, like, hey, Stranger Things season 4 is dropping tomorrow, you're not gonna. For the most part, you're just like, I'm just gonna scroll the genres, and being that it's just so much, and the feeling that you don't want to necessarily waste time watching something you're not going to like, if there's nothing being talked about online, socially, or whatever the case may be, you're going to go, you know what, let me go back to whatever the heck it was I was watching before, because at least I know that's good. But if that happens too many times, you're
Mhm.
probably going to be like, why am I paying for this? There's nothing on here. There is something here. You know how,
Mm.
like, you ever, like, when you were younger, open your fridge, and because the thing you want wasn't in your fridge, you're like, there's nothing to eat, even though it's like
Mhm.
full of to eat. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's what it was like. And at one point early on in the pandemic, Netflix was up. They were in the black. They were beating everybody badly. But they also were like releasing a film like every week,
Mhm.
and I think I've watched like 10% of that,
Mm.
because I don't even remember what was released. It was just so much content, and my life doesn't revolve around Netflix in that. There's I have too many interests for that to be a thing.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, I'm overwhelmed. Like I don't even know what to watch. Like I don't know. And so I will then err on the side of like HBO, because like, oh, Insecure is out, or oh, a new movie like The Batman, that was in theaters 30 days ago, is now on
Mm.
HBO Max. Let me subscribe to HBO just to watch this real quick. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? There isn't anything on Netflix like that outside of, I think next month is Stranger Things season 4. Oh, there's also The Witcher, but there isn't too many things that are like I gotta watch immediately. It's usually like, oh, that's dope, I'm gonna get to that eventually, or it's just a sea of content that I don't know what's happening. you know.
Mhm.
So I think the price going up, and you know, too much content, but then also I think that it was Netflix saying that they're gonna cut down on password sharing, and people hear that they're like, I don't want to. Like that's a thing. Like,
Mm.
and Netflix actually encouraged this at one point.
They
Sharing your
did.
password.
They did. They actually were like they leaned into it. That's why I don't
Yeah.
understand. It's like you knew it
Well,
was
I get it
happening
now.
anyway.
I
Yeah.
totally get it now. When they're up, when they have enough money to cover everything, they don't care. But when you lose a crazy amount of subscribers, like really quickly,
Mhm.
and you notice that you have a ton of people watching, but not all of them are paying, that's when you start to count your money.
Mhm.
And because of that, they're like, we're going to cut down. But I don't think that's necessarily the answer. Now,
It's
granted,
not.
I'm not an exec. I don't know everything. You know what I'm saying? But I do know that the more friendly you are with this stuff, I think the better. With Amazon allowing people to stream, if you have Amazon Prime, you can stream on Twitch, certain movies there, and people can watch it with you. Movies Anywhere allows you to share films that you've purchased or rented with other people. You can only do it a limited amount of times, but they allow you to share
Mhm.
because of the pandemic. And so because of that, people are gravitating more towards it. I don't know if it's because there's the opportunity there to do those things, or they feel like the company is nice, and so I want to be more loyal because they're nice. You know what I'm saying? Like an incentive. You gave me a coupon this one time, I'm coming back. You dig? And so I know, like, when you go against that, when you're like, we're gonna make it so that you have to pay, that just spells trouble for you, especially considering that you don't necessarily know how to, or at least they haven't worked out how to distinguish between someone who is taking their Netflix somewhere else versus someone who shared a password. Like, for
Right.
instance, they were talking about, you would have to pay if you're signed in somewhere else. But I'm like, what if I went to my mom's house who doesn't have
Exactly.
Netflix, and I wanted to watch mine, and I signed in on her smart TV, and we watched my Netflix? I'm actually physically there.
Yeah.
Am
They
I going to
have
have to be
no way of
charged?
knowing that.
Right. Are you going to charge me more? Now, thankfully, to be fair, I most of my Netflix is covered via T-Mobile, but I'm saying I'm not trying to pay more just because I signed in at a different place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, all of these things I think contributed to Netflix losing people, and I think what they could do, as opposed to canceling every show that they're canceling right now, is just not greenlighting so much content right away.
Yeah.
Like, or at least stagger how you release it a little bit more, because I haven't gotten through the stuff that came out in 2021. I haven't.
Yeah.
Like,
I haven't gotten through the stuff that came out in 2018. Like,
right.
I
It's just too much.
just it's too much. I just finally managed to go back and watch, Dave Chappelle's Netflix collection. Like, 'cause
Oh, wow.
I hadn't gotten there. I just hadn't. I hadn't, and you know me, back in the day, a few years ago, I literally worked from morning to night. I was never home,
Right.
and I didn't have time for anything. And you would think, "Hey, being home because you're ill and you have a concussion, oh, you have time for stuff." Not necessarily, because your head hurts. You know? So,
Right.
no, I can't just watch TV all the time because my effing head hurts. But,
Right.
um but there is way too much content in the manner in which it's like, just be a little bit more selective, please. Like, I like what they're I like a bunch of the stuff that's on, but it's almost like throw up. Like, you go to Netflix today and you're like, "Oh my god, it has 30 more titles today than it did yesterday."
Right.
And you're like, "Okay, like this." I mean, they have flagship stuff, like that's their stuff. They have stuff that, like stuff that's really popular, like Selling Sunset is really popular, right?
Right.
And I watched that show, like, I've been watching all the reality shows just because I don't care about my life. And, and, like, these are popular shows, they get a lot of conversations going. These are those reality shows feed a lot of online content. They do, they have a lot
Right.
of, they have just it's just buzz. It's not just like, "Oh, this is a really good show, I love it," type thing, "Oh, I watched this so good." No, this is reality TV, these are real people, so, after a episode airs, then you have the stars who are going on and, talking and saying stuff, and it just creates more and more and more content. Those
Right.
shows work, and so they have a bunch of them. The entire Love Is Blind series has now extended
Oh
to
goodness.
Brazil and Japan. It's like, "Wait, what?" First of all, Love Is Blind, the first season in America was crazy, and then they had the nerve to have a season 2, which was just out of control, and then they were like, "By the way, we've decided to do this in Brazil and Japan," and then they have the whole Too Hot to Handle thing, which is insane because they had Too Hot to Handle I don't like to say countries because it's actually not countries, it's language. So they had Too Hot to Handle, like, English speaking version, then they have Too Hot to Handle Brazil, so but it's not like it's Brazil, Portuguese, and then they have Too Hot to Handle Latino, which is in Spanish. So they have all these versions of the show. They did 3 seasons of Too Hot to Handle, which is so hilarious because the first season was one thing. The second season, they had to lie to everybody because they can't know that they're in the show that aired already. And the 3rd season, they literally took all the castmates from the 3rd season, put them in another villa. They didn't even know they were literally filming right after the season 2 people left.
Oh
Like,
wow.
they did it it's so smart, like, the production behind it was so smart. My point is, they have these particular shows which are popular, which get a lot of buzz because they're reality shows. Like, but then they go and they just, like, get, like, 30 greenlight 60 dramas that they're licensing, not they're not producing, they're just
Right.
grabbing. And, and it's like, did you guys make sure that you had the subscribers for this additional content? Because my issue with them and what makes me kind of irritated with Netflix as a company, because they had money issues, before the pandemic.
Right.
Especially way back in the day, they had money issues. When they were like, "Oh, we're not gonna do discs anymore because it costs money, so we're just gonna stream." Like, back then, they had that whole issue, but, like, I'm like, "Have you guys not learned any?" I don't understand because I think I'm just irritated with this idea that they think they can just buy up everything. They've got every anime now ever. They've got every K-drama, they don't even have any J-dramas, so that is just, like, 2 J-dramas, that's annoying. Um, but, like, they even have, they have this one, Korean reality dating show, which is hilarious, so watch it and season 2 is coming. Not the point. My point is they have so much content that they're bringing, like, do, grab, 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 and then but they're not checking the back end where their money is coming from. Your money is coming from the subscribers. That's how you guys are making your money. You know how much money you bring in. You know how much money you have from subscribers. It's the money that you are making from these subscribers is not covering the content that you're buying. It's this it I'm not even in this industry, and I feel like I can simply say that,
Well, I mean,
and
that's
it's
been the
correct.
case. Like, that's what made last year such a big deal when they announced they were in the black because they weren't for so long. They were in the red
Mhm,
because they were paying for things, hoping to recoup that money over time. And the problem with that, outside of it, that's a difficult thing to do, anyways. and you're promising investors that they're going to get their money eventually, or like we're going to be worth it eventually, right?
Right.
But then on top of it, it wasn't based on the subscribers that they had; it was based on the subscribers that they could get. So
Right. It
like,
was conflation.
and so like with anything, and this is in multiple fields, in terms of capitalism, it's like we
Silicon
have to
Valley, we're talking to you.
we have to up everything. So it's like, if you think about it in the video game world where they, Call of Duty sells a certain amount of money and then next year is like,
Mhm.
look, we got to sell more than this. And it's like, you really don't have to. Like, you can
Right.
afford not to. You actually made a ton of money, but investors are like, well, I'm going to invest more money into your company.
Mhm.
Or like we're going to drive up the shares, then this product needs to sell actually more. And the problem is it's finite. It's your audience is only but so big. Now, granted, I think Netflix is good because they have so much content in the sense of style of content. If you're into anime, there's some anime. If you're into horror, there's
Mhm.
some horror. If you're into action films, there's some action films. There's a ton of stuff for you to watch and kind of peruse. The problem I think is that it's so much content that they've paid for up front
Yeah.
and they're not getting the subscribers that they thought they were going to get. It worked a little bit in this like in pandemic land because people were at home. People were like, we need to watch something. We're gonna be in the house all
Uh-huh.
day. We gotta look at something. And Netflix was there. Netflix had like out of everybody had the best deal, even though it was more expensive than say HBO and whatnot.
Mhm.
In terms of what you got immediately, and
Yeah.
in terms of the streaming product itself, because Netflix is leaps and bounds better than a lot of these other streaming apps. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we have good content, we have good, a really good trusted app. We can make this work. But then you
Uh,
started dropping movies every week, fam. And not just like regular, like I don't say like low budget, but like you got films with The Rock. You got films with, you
yeah.
got what, two films with God, what's that guy's name? I can't remember, but like essentially, you had multiple films with all these stars. They're not cheap. I mean,
Yeah.
I can assume that they didn't cost as much as if it, you're when you negotiate or set this up, you're not paying them as much as they would get, for a film that's going to the theater because it's not, there's no box office draw. So, you know, that is going to be different. But you're still getting The Rock. He's not cheap. Like, you're not paying
Yeah.
him a couple thousand to be in this film. That's never going to happen,
He was
right?
like, "Oh, hey, Rock, can we get you on discount because of pandemic? So can you just do this for
Right.
free?"
Just look at you and raise his eyebrow and walk the hell away. Like that's not what's going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah.
So then you have all this. You're paying for this all up front. It's like, all right, cool. The current subscribers that you have in all these different countries, the amount of revenue that you get, you would think that would be enough. But then you forecast like, oh, if we get, because that was one of the big things that made their stock drop. It wasn't necessarily just that people left. It was the fact that they had predicted or said that they were going to have like 2.5 more subscribers and 2.5 million more subscribers by this time this year. And they actually lost 200,000. So you got to understand, if you're promising someone more than what you already have, you kind of have to meet that. And you have some stiff competition now. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You have
People are doing Apple
cheaper
TV.
Apple T. Like Apple has a Severance. Apparently, is a great show. I'm going to get to that
It
eventually.
is.
You got Peacock, which is mad cheap, but at the same time, even if you're not big on what Peacock has, they had films that are going to the theater also appearing on Peacock shortly thereafter, which is a big deal right now because people don't
Yeah.
want to necessarily go to the theaters unless it's a big Marvel film, or
Right.
Batman or something like that. So being able to watch these movies in the theater at your house, that's a big deal. So even though
Yeah.
Peacock is like what not even, I don't even think it's that, like $5 or
Peacock
something like
is
that.
actually $5. It's 4.99, I believe, and if you have
Right.
Comcast, you get it if you signed up for Comcast within a certain time frame, you get it for free. I have it for free.
Bam. So there you go. And so like I just saw that because I got an email about it because I actually subscribed to Peacock just to see the Halloween film, and
Mhm.
being a horror fan, the Firestarter remake is actually coming to Peacock next
Uh-huh.
month. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna get Peacock again. So when you have stuff like that, like, oh, the Halo show is on freaking, I forgot what, oh, it's Paramount Plus. I might
Uh-huh.
get that. Or Disney Plus has all of the Marvel stuff, the different Marvel shows and whatnot, like Moon Knight. So you have these people at the very least, even if they're not subscribed all the time. They're like, oh, let me jump on this now because this is something I want to see now. And the thing
Mhm.
is with Disney Plus, with Peacock, with Paramount Plus, is that they'll have one. Not to say that they only have one show, but they'll have one show that's being advertised right now. And so what that does is it draws your attention to that. So even if you leave, even if those customers leave because that show is over, when the next thing pops up, it's like, oh, let me come back. With Netflix, again, outside of the really, really big things that are coming there, it's almost like everything is big.
Mhm.
And so I might see a commercial about The Witcher and then totally forget about it because I just saw a commercial about Stranger Things. And then I forget about that because I saw a commercial for the movie Red. And then I forget about that because and it's
Mhm.
like it's just too much. I don't have time to watch all this stuff.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, when I do finally get a chance to watch, if it's not super popular like Stranger Things, you cancel it. So now it's like, oh, well, I don't care about this big show anymore because you just canceled. You know what I'm saying? Like I reviewed for IGN, I reviewed Raising Dion season two, which was much better than season one. And
Mhm.
mind you, I wasn't necessarily shocked to hear that it was canceled, just because it's not something that will draw new subscribers in. It'll interest people who already subscribed, definitely.
Mhm.
But I don't think anybody is going to subscribe to Netflix just to see this show. No,
Mhm.
no, no offense. But then to hear that it gets canceled, then you see people on Twitter, they're like, "Oh man, I really, I kind of dug that show." It's like I don't want to trust. Like it's like the trust is broken because Netflix does this a lot. If a
Yeah.
show gets to season three, it's lucky. It's really really lucky if a show gets to season three with Netflix. You know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
you have all these factors that are stacking up on one another because I don't think any other streaming service right now that I can think of. You know what? HBO. HBO did cancel the second season of Lovecraft Country, but the thing is, they didn't sign on for that either.
Mhm.
That was something that was like could be a thing, but for the most part, like they didn't cancel Insecure. They got to finish that. They didn't cancel a ton of shows, right? They actually get to finish, whereas Netflix not so much. There's a ton, like
Yeah.
just recently, a ton of shows got canceled, and then on top of that, like I said today, the editorial site Tadum, which is the sound that when the logo pops up, it makes that Tadum sound or whatever. That's what that comes from. It laid off a bunch of writers, which is really sad because these people were promised. These were journalists, entertainment journalists, who were promised that they were going to get paid more than what normal, journalists make, which is great. They also were, promised that they wouldn't be laid off because this side of the world, in terms of content, it's really hard. Like keep things going for various reasons, and people
Mm.
get laid off all the freaking time, unfortunately. And so like Netflix was like, nah, this is not gonna happen with us. We got you. We got money in the bank. You know what I'm saying? So,
Mhm.
but unfortunately, 5 months after they launched, because they launched in December, they're letting people go. And I can only imagine, considering how quickly this happened after they lost however much money, in their stocks, that this is because of Netflix losing so many subscribers. But it's like from our understanding, or at least outside looking in, that Tadum and they have their digital and print magazine Q or whatever. Like you have these different aspects that are under the main business. It's like, well, aren't they separate? Like why should that matter? And right now, Netflix makes most of this money through the streaming services.
Mhm.
And so unfortunately, that's going to trickle down into other places. Look, we gotta recoup, and not necessarily because Netflix is in dire need of money, but because people who are investing in them are upset. So if we promise, like, say, if we make the numbers really small, let's say we promise you, their investors, like, you're going to get at least a hundred thousand this year on top of what you would normally get from last year, and you can't fill that, then you're like, let me let go all these people. I can free up some money, and now I can keep my investors happy. Is
Yeah.
essentially what happens. This at least
Yeah.
this happens a lot in the video game world.
It happens in all the industries because the investors are the only people that they wanna keep happy. The end user, it doesn't matter.
And that's trash. And so a lot of people, a lot of good people, a lot of great writers,
Mhm.
are out of a job suddenly, and that's a horrible feeling. Like this, I've been there, and granted, I was given a month heads up. These people were like they just came into work and then was like, hey, you
Yeah.
don't work here anymore. So yeah, it really sucks, and I hope Netflix can turn things around. I hope they can, get things back to where they could be. But I think they need to make some different moves. They need to. I don't know. I don't even know. They need to do something though, because yeah, people are. It's the last thing you want to do is start firing people, laying people off. Um, you know, potentially being sold under something else, cutting off,
Right.
legs of the company and all this other stuff to try to please these other people who don't really even care about the content that you have going on. You know what I'm saying?
No. And
So,
probably have their money in other companies. They'll survive.
of
Like,
course, it's
this
it's two
yeah.
yachts as opposed to one. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Exactly. I mean, and come on, Netflix. Things ebb and flow. You might lose subscribers in the spring because it's nice outside, but when it gets cold again, you might get new subscribers. So kind of chill.
I
And
mean, I'm pretty
like it's in your
sure,
name. Just Netflix and
right?
chill.
I'm pretty sure that some people are gonna come back when certain big shows come back. Um,
Yeah.
It just happens. It happens all the time. Or
Happens
there's a
all the time.
buzz. You get a show that like Squid Games, huge
Yeah.
buzz. People
When Squid
came
Game
like
2 comes back,
right.
like, when that comes back and people especially if they've locked down the stupid password sharing, which I don't know if they're gonna figure that out, but people
Right.
will people will find a way, like, people will come back. If it's easier to just get a Netflix subscription and watch your favorite show. I mean, we also know one of their issues is that Netflix does they are the king of binge. Like, they release an
Yeah.
entire show, and so it doesn't keep people coming back every week, what, like, HBO, like, you know, there's 10 episodes of The Gilded Age, which is, one of HBO's newer shows. So for 10 weeks, you need to keep coming back, whereas Netflix, it's mostly they release the whole batch of the show, but we like them for that. We people got
Yeah.
more people signed up, more people subscribed to Netflix because they were doing that when with their shows, because remember when Netflix was just movies before. And
Right.
so when they started putting shows on, it was the entire show. So once you start that binge model, you you're not the subscription doesn't make sense. And I don't know why Netflix, after all of these years of existing and hiring people and paying people big salaries, they haven't figured out a way to continue with their binge model but make subscriptions make more sense. Because if somebody
It's
literally subscribes just to watch season 2 of Russian Doll, and after they binge it for the day, they cancel, that's on you guys. And I'm not saying that they need to make people stuck into their plan for the entire month or 3-month plan minimum stuff. I'm not saying that they need to do that, but it is up to them as a company to figure out how to continue to give the product that you offered, which nobody else had. Nobody else was allowing binging of an entire show. It literally created a culture.
yeah.
Okay. And nobody was offering that. So you still have the monopoly on that because Hulu at best of a new show will release 3 episodes at one time. At best. And
It makes
that's
sense.
not because of Hulu, that's because of the show's production team. They're like, "No, we wanna get people hooked. So let's give them 3 episodes." But my point is, it's your job, Netflix, to have figured out how to support the binge model, and
Yeah.
not figuring that out is just lazy.
I,
It's
I wouldn't
lazy.
say lazy. I would say it's hard, right? Because and not to say that like again, because I don't work in any of these
Mhm,
particular places, but I know like there's things that people do that are coming in later because hindsight 2020 and all that good stuff. Where HBO might start a show in the middle of the month. So even
mhm,
if they were to release a bunch of episodes back to back, by the time the show is done or at least that season is done, it's a new month. So you have to
mhm,
pay again, right? So at the very least they're going to get 2 months out of you.
mhm,
And so like how you release it, when you release it, the timing and all that that comes into play. But again, Netflix has built up this culture of bingeable, shows, right?
mhm,
And it's difficult to balance that because I personally would rather binge
Yeah.
because of time. Because I can watch something back to back, and maybe it's like two films worth of content, and I'm done, and I can move on to the next thing. Whereas waiting each week, because there's so much content, and this goes back to just having too much stuff to watch,
Mm.
you get lost. Like I haven't gone back and watched the last two episodes of The Walking Dead recently because it was releasing each week, and I forgot. And typically, when it was cable, it was different. Like you timed it. You was like, 8 o'clock
Mhm.
on Sunday. You know what I'm saying? But like with streamed stuff, it's like, oh, I can watch it whenever. And that
Mhm.
whenever mindset is like, I will eventually get to it, but you never do. That's what happened with the DVDs. You would have it sitting there, and you're like, I'm gonna watch it when I get a chance, and then you forget, and then they got me for another month. I still got the disc. You know
You
what I'm
do
saying? It's
know that
like
that's how I ended up with Hamlet. I own Hamlet now because I never
you
got
had it
to
for so
it,
long.
and I had it for so long that it became mine.
That's that see that it in a way that works in their favor. And so the problem though is like with if your customers want to binge, you have to kind of cater to that. I think that what you could do is maybe break up the seasons in a way that's like you get a certain amount of episodes and it's like a mid-season break, and then come back because the next part, and they're doing that with Stranger Things. The final season I think is in two parts, so you have to at least for the first month or the first whenever the first thing drops, you have to subscribe for that month. When the second one is not going to drop until the following month, so that's at least 2 months of subscription out of you.
Mhm.
If they did that with all their shows, but not just for the final season, just for all seasons, where you can break it up. You still get kind of a binge experience, but you don't get all
Mhm.
of it. So you're gonna come back eventually.
Mhm.
That and then you don't have to shoot anything else. It's not like where you finish the whole season like, okay, we're gonna have to shoot this next thing. We haven't even written the next
Mhm.
thing yet. No, you've got it all shot. You just have to wait. I think
Just
that might
wait.
be a better solution than doing it weekly
Mhm.
because and then also with that, some shows just don't work, at least in their format. They don't
Mhm.
work weekly. There's a bunch of shows that I bounced off of because I was like, this is trash. And then when I went back and binged it, I was like, oh, you know what? If I could have actually gotten to episode 4 right away, it would have been okay. But
Mhm.
episode 1 and 2 was kind of, and I'm not gonna wait a whole week for something that might be trash. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
like, it's a hard thing to juggle. Is my point,
Mhm.
especially when you've built up a fandom that revolves around I can watch my whole show on a Saturday night and it's great.
Mhm.
I don't have to wait. Yeah, that's kind of rough. What I think would help Netflix prior to that, and we'll move on after this, was having shows that people can just kind of go back to. When they had TV shows like The Office and
Mhm.
Scrubs, stuff like that, where it's a comfort show where you can always go back to it, people were fine with that. I think
Mhm.
once you remove those legacy
Which did,
shows
yeah. Mhm.
and you only
Which
have
are now
content
back
that
now they're on Peacock.
right. Yep. When you remove those legacy shows, I think that creates a void where it's like, what am I going to watch in between watching what I want to watch?
Mhm.
And you don't have that comfort anymore. So you're like, I guess there's nothing to watch, even though there is. So yeah.
Empty
Next thing you
fridge
want to,
syndrome.
yes. Yeah, empty fridge. That should be the name of the show. And so like the next thing we want to talk about very briefly, because I don't really want to talk more about Elon Musk at any point in life, but
Yeah.
it's a thing that happened, so let's talk about it. Elon Musk is buying Twitter, and when I found out about it, I thought it was hilarious in the sense that someone is basically this is like this is like white privilege to the max. I think where like someone is was upset about something, maybe like being censored, or they didn't like how they weren't allowed to say whatever they could say without any type of consequence, or just someone who felt the way about Twitter was like, you know what, I'm gonna go borrow a goofy amount of money and I'm gonna buy it because I can do that because I can
Mm,
flex. I'm gonna flex on all of you hoes. That's what I'm gonna do.
yeah.
I'm just gonna
That's
buy
the
Twitter.
major flex.
And so it was like after that, after I found it funny and just how ludicrous it was, I was also like, darn, this sucks because this is even though Twitter can be a horrible place, it's also a tool that has been beneficial, especially to minorities when it comes to getting work, getting seen, getting your voice out, getting your content out. It's been a very valuable tool because it's such a interesting social thing the fact that you could just post something that is, created in a way that's separate from Facebook, where you have to befriend people, and it's built off of this community types thing, where like Twitter can be more so a free for all for just ideas that can go viral and that can get you seen from other people and all this other stuff. Like people have landed jobs because of stuff that they said on Twitter. Like I've literally gotten gigs because I was like, "Hey, you need somebody to do this thing? I can do this thing." And they're like,
Mhm.
"We need someone who can do that thing. You think Kenny could do that thing? I think Kenny could do that thing. Let's see if Kenny could do that thing." And then I was able to do the thing. It was all
Yeah.
because of Twitter. So then to have someone that comes in who, and granted, I'm not saying that Twitter was ever a great place to be, or a great site, because it can be very toxic. There are plenty of Nazis and just crazy people on Twitter. However, having someone come in and buy Twitter in the guise of like providing freedom of speech is just a bad thing waiting to happen. And it's all I don't really need to go into why that's a bad thing. It should be very well like evident. Like it's I don't understand why you wouldn't see this as a bad thing.
Yeah.
Plenty of people who are smarter than me have already, given you a laundry list of why. But like I
Mhm.
said, it's worth talking about, even briefly, because it's a thing that's happening right now. But yeah, it's not a good look. I'm still gonna be on Twitter. I'm not leaving, at least not
Mhm.
yet,
Not yet, yeah.
because again, it has helped me in my career. I might lock my account. Who knows? We'll see. But there's no need to like jump out of windows or anything like that. But it is concerning. It is concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, like, the biggest fan of Elon Musk, and I was a huge fan of Elon Musk long time ago when,
Mm,
like, the Roadster came out. Is that what it was called? The Tesla Roadster? You
I
know?
think so.
And then even follow like, for a period of time, I really was. I really liked him. I was like, "Oh my god, he's making these awesome cars. He's really innovative and X, Y, and Z." And so many people were calling him, um, what's that? There was that one guy, I think it was a Ford executive or something, said he was nothing more like he's a Ponzi. And
Yes.
yeah, and I felt like he was kind of a misunderstood entrepreneur. I was like, "Isn't this guy making really awesome cars? Like, why are you calling him a Ponzi?" Like, he literally explained that he charged so much money for the first one so that he could make the second one so that he could make the third ones. I'm like, Where did he Ponzi you guys? You guys got your product, didn't you?" Like, type thing.
I
Um,
mean,
but but then he started hanging out with Azalea Banks and getting high and and writing weird things on Twitter, and I was like, "Who is this dude really?"
bam. The fact that it's crazy, because the fact his company doesn't actually make money off of the things that he sells. It's weird.
No. Yeah, it's weird.
It's 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 like he sells credits. I don't even know how this works, but like
I
he
don't.
doesn't make money off Tesla. He
Yeah,
really doesn't.
there's nothing made,
Um,
no money made.
you know what I'm saying? But like he gets people to give him money somehow, and then he gets
Yeah.
to do all these things. It's just, and this is what's happening with Twitter. Like you're getting something that doesn't make money, or using, I don't even know. It's a
I
weird
don't
thing.
know.
It's weird. It's
I
just
don't
definitely
know how
weird.
Twitter makes money. I never really understood how Twitter and Facebook, I mean, I understand how Facebook makes money now, especially because Facebook is data mining. Um,
Correct.
but back in the day, like MySpace and stuff, I just thought that they were social platforms, and I don't know how they were running. I didn't know how much money it took to run them. I just knew that they were running and we didn't have to pay for stuff. You
Yeah.
know? We didn't have to pay, and it's just what it was. I don't know how they were able to be. And then I watched the Facebook movie, and I'm like, "Okay, so he made this thing, this social network, and then all of a sudden he got this really big, office for all the nerds to hang out in and work at." I still didn't know where the money was coming from. I
Yeah.
didn't.
It's
I
it's. I mean, and to be fair, and when I mean fair, I don't mean fair. I mean, privilege. Like a lot of these people
Mhm.
got, like Elon Musk, I believe, got like seed money from like family or something like that,
Mhm, yeah.
which he was able to start a company, which led to all this other stuff. And I think there is some ingenuity in how people maneuver in that space in order to maintain money, get more money from people who, even though you haven't actually made anything grand,
Mhm.
and but then at the same time, it's like it's a bunch of white people giving each other money.
That's
So
true.
it's like how great do you have to be? I mean, just kind of be lucky to be born in to a family that affords you multiple opportunities and a ton of freaking money to kind of
Yeah.
do whatever you want, and then have people who will be diehard fans of you no matter what you sell, and so they'll buy anything. Um, it's really a 1, 2, 3 step program. Like just start off rich and continue to be rich. You know, that's
And
kind of how it
more
goes.
rich, and then,
Yeah,
things.
stupid rich, like just I and to the point of just obscure amount of money, um, which is also interesting when you think about how they don't pay people enough and they don't. There was this whole thing with Tesla not too long ago actually with being racist and having um, people like black people work in, the field as they would call it or whatever I forgot the racist name that they called it, but like essentially picking cotton, like it was
A
a
plantation?
alluding, yeah, they were alluding to that. They work in the field. There was a lawsuit recently. I think they lost too. Don't, quote me on that. I haven't read into it a whole lot. I just saw the foolishness a while back and was like, what? Are you serious? But yeah, essentially, you can do no wrong. And a lot of people who are, which is really funny too, but a lot of people who are like, I was censored on Twitter, and then all of a sudden Elon Musk bought Twitter, and now all of my content is back, and I can do whatever. And it's like, fam, you realize that the deal hasn't gone through yet. It actually is going to take a little while.
Mhm.
All Twitter did was like, the boards were like, we accept it. Now it has to go through the legal process. Nothing has changed yet, like at all. You, it's wild how people like trick themselves into stuff. Like they just, I don't know, read a damn book. Anyways, the last thing we wanted to talk about was Nintendo, who are also going through some stuff. Nintendo has had a great time with the Switch in terms of just the amount of money that they're making. Their games are selling like hotcakes. Like Nintendo's doing really really well, especially coming off of the Wii U, and it's every company has their issues, and apparently Nintendo is not exempt. Um, Apparently Nintendo of America. I'm looking at Kotaku. Shout out to Ethan and I think it's Sissy. I'm hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, but they basically wrote about how Nintendo of America contractors feel like second class workers. They're not being paid as much as they should, and they feel exploited. One person who brought up the idea of unions was fired mid contract, because with contract work with a lot of companies, they outsource. They do contracted work as opposed to doing full time employees, because you have to give them things like a decent wage and like benefits and stuff like that. And all that stuff costs money, and you don't want to pay that. So you get contractors who can work longer for less. And so, they work through an agency. This particular agency was Ashton Carter, and they are supposed to, they're basically staffing uh, Nintendo for people who are going to work on their games, help to finish up games and stuff like that. And there was a some of the workers filed a um, I want to say a lawsuit against
Mm,
Nintendo of America, basically stating that they were always under surveillance. There was retaliation, like when the person brought up unions and how they got fired right after, and just unfair labor practices. Um, Now, the tricky thing about this is that there's no hard, I guess, spot you can pin it on, because you have the contract agency, Ashton Carter. You also have Nintendo of America. You have Nintendo of Japan, and Nintendo of Japan is the main company. And so we don't know how much of wiggle room there is. We don't know if there's like Nintendo of Japan is like this is how we operate, and
mm,
so you need to fire that guy for talking about unions, or if it's Nintendo of America being like, hey, don't rock the boat because we work under Nintendo of Japan and they're kind of strict, so you're
mhm,
fired, or if it's because Ashton Carter is like, hey, Nintendo can go with another contractor if you rock the boat, so you're fired. We don't
Mm,
know. We don't know which entity, or was it a collection of all three. We just know that some stuff went down, and the contractors are made to feel, it's like one of those things where you want to work for this company. It's a notoriously legendary company, and you feel like you got your foot in the door. And hopefully, if you do enough contracted work, you might get a full time job. That's the carrot that's on the end of the stick. But you have to go through all this BS essentially to kind of
mhm.
get there. And even when you do become a full time employee, there's other stuff that comes in the way. One story I wanted to share real quick was that I guess someone fell while they were working, or like coming into work, and had a head injury, and they were like, there's an on-site like clinic that she could go to, and they were like, you can't come in here because you don't have insurance, because you're not a full-time employee, you are a
Mm.
contractor. So she was like, okay. She went to ask a full-time employee, like, hey, can you drive me to the hospital? I hurt myself. And they're like, we can't do that, it's against company policy to actually drive you someplace, because we might be considered liable and all this
Yeah,
other stuff. So she had to freaking Uber uh to get care. She hurt herself, and there's a whole clinic, like a whole ass clinic, like there, where she could get checked up on. You know,
because
um,
she's a contractor, she's not allowed to use the clinic?
right? She's not allowed to, because she's not a full time employee.
That
They're
sound
not.
you know what? I just to interject, that is real stuff because I used to be a contractor when I worked for the federal government,
Mm,
and those rules are legit, real, and really strict. You do not get to enjoy the same, and I'm not gonna use the word luxuries because there's no luxuries when you work for the freaking government. But I mean, I'm talking about separate entrances type thing. I'm talking about, um, if you're not wearing your badge at all times, showing you're a contractor, you're in violation or stuff, or no, you can't use this like the health program because you're not an employee because they have this huge government like or agency wide program for health, and you're not allowed to you can't use the gym, you can't use the facilities, you can't
right.
shower here, you can't use the clinic. Like, because we had a clinic too. I think we were allowed to use it, but there were certain things we couldn't have. Like, if you needed to lay down, you could lay down or something, but I can't really remember.
Hey, just look. You can lie in the corner over there. Like, just don't touch anything. Like,
Like, yeah, no, like,
don't get blood
seriously, it
on
really
anything.
it's true, and I don't mean to interject, but I'm like, no, the contractor rules are so real. Like, some places you can't even use the bathroom.
All right, that's just trash.
I
Like,
know, but it's
people
true. I'm not
visiting
saying
can
that
use
didn't
the
happen at the
bathroom.
government. That didn't happen, like, where I work, but I know there are some places it's like that.
So
It's
you got to
that
go home to use the bathroom?
there's
Fam, if I have to go home and it's not like an emergency, I'm not
Mhm.
coming back. I'm not.
Right.
Like
Not.
like what what, what are we doing?
There are a lot of
Um
rules for contractors, it's crazy.
it's bananas. It's really, and like, so then, and cuz a lot of people, when this story kind of broke, a lot of people were like, "Well, a lot of companies do that." I'm like, if it's wrong over there, it's still wrong here. Like,
Still wrong.
let's not do whataboutism, to kind of click, cuz you love Nintendo. Stop it. It's trash. Um and so, like, there's people who want to be, and that's the thing. It's so trash because you have, first of all, you have enough money. Like, Nintendo has a lot of money. But then you
Mhm.
have these people who are essentially putting up with this mess because they really, really, really want to be a full-time employee of Nintendo. Like, they just want to have that on their resume. They want to have that because they believe in Nintendo, whatever the case may be. And, they grew up with Nintendo. And so they're and like, Nintendo or whoever is in the wrong here is like, you know what? We don't have to. We don't have to give you anything, because we know as soon as you leave or get hurt or whatever the case may be, we can replace you with the dozens of other people who want to jump in, who don't know anything about what's happening here. It's similar to like when I was working at GameStop. People would come in and be like, "This must be the greatest job ever. You get to play games." And I'm like, "Who told you that? Like, at
Mhm.
what point do you see me playing games? Do you see that's not a That's not a thing unless we're playing the will you pre-order this game, or me trying to sell you some Game Informers. Like, dude, we could play that game, but there's not a whole lot of game playing here. There's a lot of work, for very little pay. That's a thing, but no, that's not. But because it's video games, because people want to do it, it's like, oh, this looks like a good thing. This looks like
Mhm.
something I would be, I'm enamored with what it is you do, and I would like without knowing anything about it, and so I would like do that. So you would think like you have people who are, in this case, testers who help to make the games better, to get out the door and whatnot, that make very little, I think it's like $16 an hour, but they, living in Seattle, it's not the greatest amount of money considering where they live.
Mhm. Yeah.
Only a few people make like $20 and over, and and that's full time. That's not contracted, and so the contractors are making less than that, and they don't get any benefits. They still have to work a lot. They do have breaks; those are mandatory breaks that they had to have. And this is something that started, with Microsoft after there was a class action lawsuit a long time ago, um, where this weird like they were being treated like they were temp people, but they were treated like full time in a sense that you just stayed that way the whole time. And so what they did is they break up the contracts to be a certain amount of months, and then you get a break, and then you can come back. The idea is that you would do this because, hey, I have experience now. Maybe you can hire me full time when you have instead of hiring outside of the company, you can hire me because I've been here for like 11 freaking months.
Mhm.
But that's not the case. And so, yeah, it's just rough. And after a while, people are like, you know what? We need to unionize. We need to, get it together. And there was pushback and people got fired. And so now it's like, okay, we're gonna go with a more legal aspect and potentially sue. And so all this stuff is coming out. On top of that, Nintendo was having an issue with their Joy Cons. Now we know about the Joy-Con drift issue and how their Joy Cons, if you played any of them for any amount of time, eventually they'll start to drift to one direction, and you have to get that fixed or get it replaced, because it'll get to the point where you just can't play the game that you're trying to play.
Mhm.
And Nintendo was doing a free repair system where if you mail them in, even if they're out of warranty, they'll go ahead and fix them for you and mail them back. Well, Nintendo outsources, like, because that's what companies do. And if you were, submitting your repairs on the East Coast, you were sending them to a company called United Radio. United, and this is actually because I actually just got our Joy Cons back from this place, and this is before I knew this.
Uh-huh.
Um, Apparently, according to a former supervisor there, this is also pulling from Kotaku. Um, they were like overwhelmed with the amount of Joy Cons that came in, and Nintendo was kind
Mhm.
of Nintendo had this issue because people were starting to sue them. They were like, you have a Joy-Con problem, you have a controller problem, and excuse me, this is a problem, and you continue to make these and sell these and blah 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 blah. Nintendo's like, we're gonna fix it, but Nintendo's not doing it themselves; they're outsourcing,
Mhm.
and so send it to these companies. The companies have to fix it, return them, but because there's so many coming in, they're overwhelmed. This wouldn't be a
Uh-huh.
problem if they're like, okay, we have a lot coming in. We're going to extend the amount of time that it takes to repair, or we're going to
Mhm.
hire more people.
Yeah, hiring
They
more
didn't do
people sounds like smart.
like a smart idea. They didn't do any of that. Instead, they kept the strict deadlines and was like, you just got to get it done. And because of that, there was a ton of mistakes. People got the wrong equipment back,
Mhm.
just a whole bunch of stuff. And people were like stressed out and just, and it's like the company in and of itself was like, this is it's essentially it's they were sorry that there was mix-ups, but going back inside the company, they're like, you guys need to get it together. They didn't fix it. They didn't try to repair things, ironically, with the workers. They just tried to save face with the people who were sending in their products and stuff, because when you send it in, you're thinking, oh, is fixing this. So if Nintendo looks bad, Nintendo's gonna be like, hey, United Radio, what's good? And they're gonna be
Yeah.
like, don't worry. In other words, don't remove your contract. We will fix it for you. And then they go
Mhm.
back and turn to the employees and be like, you want to be fired tomorrow? If not, get it done, instead of hiring more people because they want to keep the
Yeah.
contract. Essentially, is what I'm getting for that. And so what happened is we got multiple class action lawsuits. And it's like, dang it. Like like there's no I guess wiggle room here in a sense. Even with it not necessarily being a Nintendo company, Nintendo's working with them. And so there's got to be some type of oversight. There's got to be some type of, you stepping in and being like, okay, we don't want you to work them like slaves. We just want you to get this thing done in a proper manner. So if you need more time, just take more time, hire more people. Maybe if we paid you a little bit more on our end in terms of contracted work, maybe you could hire more people.
Yeah.
Wherever the case may be, you should not be getting sued. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's this, and so the reason why I bring up these two stories up is because there's this collective, I don't know, thought that contracted people are less than because they're
Mhm.
contracted. Even people who are defending Nintendo is like, well, they're contracted. There's your problem right there. They're not full time. It's like, fam, all that means is that you're given a job to do for a certain amount of time. That's it. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean you need to be paid less. Heck, I was contracted for a while and I was paid really freaking well,
Yeah.
luckily. But all it means is that you're paid through an agency to do a job.
Mhm.
Excuse me. For a certain amount of time, you're not full time. That's all that means. I get it in terms of health benefits, right? Because that's something that they do for full time. But
Mm.
everything else, you should be treated like a regular full time employee. You have regular hours, you do regular work, you get paid a decent wage. That's all it is. They don't want to know. They don't necessarily want you for the full time, or it might be something where like, hey, it's the holidays and we know like a lot of people are buying switches on, during the Christmas season, and so we need to ramp up, like any store, we need to ramp
Mhm.
up on people, and once that season is over, we kind of don't need you anymore, so you're contracted, but during that entire time you are paid like everybody else. That's all it
Mm.
is. It doesn't mean you're less than. And too many people see that as a thing, like this is just what you got to go through to be employed there, or this is just what you got to go through because you're a contractor. And it's like that's not what it means, people. Like,
Yeah.
these are humans that are being treated very poorly at one of the biggest gaming companies on the planet,
Yeah.
even though
And
it's indirectly.
yeah. It's not good.
Definitely.
It's not good at all. It's just it just seems to suck all around. I mean,
Right.
and when these problems that keep happening with all of these companies, they seem so avoidable.
Just like not be trash.
Yeah.
Just not be trash. Like you, and again, I'm not in accounting, but I just kind of know that you could pay people decent wage. I just kind of know that based on how much money you got coming in.
Yeah.
Because when you have, unless, because we love to pick on Amazon, right? If you look at, Amazon, the CEO of Amazon or whatever, and
Yeah.
how, people were like, we're not getting paid the right amount, working their warehouses and all this other stuff. And people are like, you know what? All his money is in, it's in stocks, it's in all this other stuff, right? And then, but then you look and go, oh, look, every year he takes out money to buy like the dumbest things. Like, hey, I want to build a rocket ship.
Yeah.
If you have enough money to build a freaking rocket, you have enough money to pay your employees. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Even if you get it out of your pocket, you have enough money. You do.
That is
The
something that
reason
I'm sorry to interject. It's something that I feel really passionate about because I kind of get upset. I see all these people, especially online, that are like jumping to the billionaires' defenses, and I'm not saying that just because you're rich, we should all be ragging on you because that again is unfair. That's another form of like just being discriminated against because oh, we hate you because you're rich, and no, it's just that it's so interesting that Amazon actively attacked, the guy, I forgot his name, the one who successfully created the union,
Oh, right,
and
yes.
yeah, they did all of these things. I mean, there's record of it. There's recorded phone calls, there's paper trail that they actively tried to destroy this man for speaking out about work conditions and not being paid, and Jeff Bezos even was on some of those communications because people are like, "Oh, he didn't have anything to do with it," but he was on some of those communications. Like, this stuff trickles down, it comes from the top,
Right.
and nobody is saying that he shouldn't be allowed to be a billionaire or something. He co-founded Amazon, whatever, I was in high school when Amazon became a thing, and we all know that that's a long time ago. Um,
Right.
so but when you have hundreds of thousands of employees and they're suffering, but you are on a spaceship. How come? Like, I'm not saying that you don't get to enjoy nice things. You have nice things. In fact, you have so many nice things that you cheated on a nice thing with something that you thought was a nicer thing, and then you had to give half of your money to that one. Like, you have that much money. You have so much money that you can break up your own marriage and then pay somebody half of what you have.
Right.
I'm
And
just
it's not
saying.
even like it doesn't even affect you. Like
No, it doesn't even
like
affect you. So, like, how I personally know a company owner, a CEO of a well, executive chairman of a company who literally did not take a paycheck for a year, for a whole year, did not take a paycheck from his own company so that he could make sure his workers were paid.
so that's rare.
It is so rare and it is so it's so I don't know the word's not coming to my head, but, like, I wanna say, like, shameless. Like, it's
Right.
such a good thing. Like,
Because if we're being honest, they don't need the money. Like
yeah.
if you've ever made, forget a billion, right? If you made like $2 million, let's just say two. You know what? I'll do more than that. Let's say 300 million,
Mhm.
because these guys have a lot of money. Let's say 300 million. Unless you have a house that costs $1 million a month,
Right.
something along those lines. But like 300 million a year is still a bananas amount of money. If you didn't work for the next 5 years, you would be 100% okay.
Yeah.
You would. Now,
In
granted,
fact,
no
your
one would
life
want
might
to
be
do that.
better.
Well, yeah, you like that's a major vacation. Like that would be lovely, right? But again, you just don't need the money in a sense because you can buy whatever you want. Outside of just bleeding money, just cause like you just,
Mhm.
I don't know, you bought a unicorn that only eats golden apples or some junk, and so the taxes on him is like bananas, and you just have to keep paying that.
Mm.
Don't look at me like that. It's you know what it is.
It sounds like a Lambo.
Right. If you have something along those lines where it's a lot of money, I can understand like, hey, we got to work this year. Maybe last year we couldn't work, but this year we got to work because my unicorn, it's big. It's a big unicorn.
Yeah,
I
and the
okay,
golden
fine.
apples are, rare
They're
and heavy.
expensive, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But that's not the case. If you wouldn't buy a rocket ship, you could feed these people. You don't need this stuff.
It's so
Like
simple.
Elon
Didn't
Musk
John
sent a
Mackey do the
car
same
into
thing?
space. You said what?
John Mackey did the same thing, the former CEO of, the co-founder of Whole Foods. He stopped taking a salary after a certain period of time. He reduced his salary to $1. I know some people, that I worked with are like, "Oh, that's nothing because he still makes money." And I'm like, "But it doesn't matter if he still makes money. The point is that he still makes money off of other things, like he has stock options, but his
Yep.
salary, like the salary of a CEO, he his whatever, however much $600,000 a year, I don't know how much it was at that point in time, but he made it $1 because
Right.
he didn't need the money, so that the money could go back to people. Like,
Yeah, once you get to that point, like you don't, again, he like he's making money. Like I remember, well, I think it was Bill Gates was talking
mhm,
about how if he dropped $1, and don't quote me if this is not super accurate, but he was like if he dropped $1, like $100 in the street, it would actually cost him more money to turn around and pick it up than it would if he just kept walking. Like he's making money. That's how much money he's making. And so at a point, it's like I could just not, and I could be okay. Like I could turn off the faucet money wise and then turn it
mhm,
back on years later and be totally fine.
it'd be
The
fine,
only
yeah.
time you wouldn't be is if you're trying to invest, you're trying to make a new build, company or something like that. You have to invest a ton of money. But well, hopefully, I would imagine you're not doing this every day, and so yeah, you could literally lower your salary to nothing and be perfectly fine. You can still buy that yacht. You
Yeah.
can. You know what I mean? So but anywho, I like Nintendo can afford to pay people properly. They can, outsource to better companies. They can do, and I don't know if this is Nintendo of America doing shady stuff or if it's Nintendo of Japan telling Nintendo of America to do shady stuff. Don't know. Nintendo hasn't. They did release a statement about the lawsuits, but they haven't released a statement in terms of, uh, you know, what they plan on doing or what the they're going to do in terms of the Joy-Con situation. They haven't. They're kind of looking into things, but beyond that, they haven't really said anything. And so we'll see. But I just is how well they've been doing for the past few years. They're not they're not hard up. They're not.
Yeah.
Like it's especially considering that paying people decent amount of money, the amount of contractors that you have, it would not equal to anything remotely close to the CEO's salary. It just
Yeah.
wouldn't, you know? Uh, but yes, that is our show for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed our banter about Nintendo and a little bit about Elon Musk and Netflix doing some interesting things money wise. Uh, definitely, if you're listening to this on YouTube, feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're up on all the new content that's coming out. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, any place like that, definitely subscribe and add us to your RSS feed so you know when we launch another episode. Definitely check us up at the Gamecast1 on Twitter. Feel free to follow me on Kenny U of G and Messy Tessie Bakes or just Messy Tessies on Twitter for
Something like
Tess,
that.
something like that. It's all below. You can read it all below. Uh, and yeah, I believe that's it for housekeeping. We have some cool stuff coming up in the near future. As long as we don't get sick and life doesn't happen because whatever. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of content. Just the crap that not crap. That's the wrong word. But the stuff that Netflix puts on their streaming platform daily. It's just enough that we could talk about for the rest of the year. But
Yeah.
beyond that, there's a lot of cool things, and definitely in the comments, I've seen some people leave comments about things that we talked about. Liking our conversation. If you want us to talk about a specific thing, definitely let us know.
Yeah.
We'll look into that. I can't promise you, but if it's on one of the apps that we have, we can definitely check it out. I
Mhm.
hear tell of Vox Machinima. I think that's what it's called, or Vox
Mm.
Mechana. Vox what?
Mhm.
Machina? Vox Mac? Okay, Vox Mac. My wife just corrected me. Vox
Okay.
Machina. All right. On Prime, I hear that it's good. So maybe that. Maybe we'll check that out.
If
Um,
it's better than the Wheel of Time, then sure.
I think it doesn't, it just has to be at this point, considering what you've said about it. I
So
think it just has to be better. I mean, it's
so
animated, so it gets some cool points there. But what it's yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, definitely follow. Definitely let us know what you want us to talk about, and we will definitely do that. That's it for housekeeping.
Just remember to be kind, wash your faces, wash your hands, wash your butts, please.
Yes.
And all this mask stuff is confusing, but my take is still wear a mask. I wear a mask everywhere I go. People look at me like I'm crazy. I don't go very many places. I've told you guys this, but when I do go places, I'm wearing a mask.
Yes.
So, because COVID still exists, and I know people who got COVID recently. So, point is, don't be that person. Don't
Yes.
be that person who spreads COVID. 'Cause it's still out there. Also, apparently, polio is making a comeback
Are you
in other
serious?
I don't mean to extend this, but it literally, it's in the news. You gotta go read it. It's vaccine polio, though. It's the kind of polio you get from the vaccine. And this is not any anti-vaccine type thing. This is, it's happening in, non-Western countries where most people are vaccinated with the live culture polio, whereas in the United States, UK, other places, we're vaccinated with non-live polio. And
Mm.
so, other countries, continent of Africa, Middle East, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent, places like that are being vaccinated with the small amount of live polio, in the vaccines, which, mind you, is not a problem. It's good for them because they don't have access to, like, the refrigeration and stuff that you need for the ones we have here. The issue is that the water supplies aren't clean. and so they can get infected from the water supply because
Oh, wow.
basically the when somebody's vaccinated with the live virus, it sheds. It can shed through your stool, and if the water supply isn't clean, somebody can
Ah,
become infected depending on how strong the virus is after it passes through the body. So if it passes through the body weak and it infects the water supply, that actually will help inoculate other people because they will then have gotten the small amount of virus. Their body will fight it off and they will be vaccinated. That actually is a good thing. However, if the virus mutates and lives in the stool and becomes stronger, like viruses do, hello, Omicron, Delta,
right.
that's the nature of them. They find ways to live. If that happens, then and it infects the water supply, then people can get polio, and which it's actually happening. I did read that on the news that that is a
Yeah, I'm
thing.
looking at it now.
Yep.
That's yeah. It's
So
definitely
didn't mean to
unfortunate.
turn us that direction, but it is something that's happening. So yeah, if you wanted to worry about that and Ebola, there you go. Have a good night, everyone. We're gonna end on that. Great talking to you. Hope to see you next week. Bye bye.